Say what you want about the new version of Killteam, but one thing that it does have going for it is the new single-player PvE joint play teaching scenario, whatever you want to call it, mode. Personally, I think that this is a pretty cool addition to the game, and I think that more of the Games Workshop games could really benefit from such a mode, either as a learning tool or just as something for you to be able to play when you don't necessarily have the time to go around, find pickup games, or go and set up games at your local game store. But we are Warcry players, and we want in on that action. There was a single-player Warcry scenario that was released way back in the 2021 Tome of Champions called the Rat Hunters. If you have a copy of that book, you can go play that scenario today, or else you can find those rules over on Warcry. But what I've done for you here is I've taken all of those brand new Killteam rules, translated them into Warcry for you guys. I have probably playtested a whole lot more than those rules were playtested to begin with, sprinkled in a bit of that original Rat Hunter scenario for a bit of spice, and I've got something that I'm real happy to share with you guys today. So let's get into it. This is my cooperative mission pack designed for players who are either just getting into the game or as a teaching aid for people to teach other people how to play without necessarily having to face them in one-on-one combat and usually beat them into the ground. Okay, so here it is. Warcry Mission Pack. You can download this, it's a free download. I have put it up on my blog off Musings.com. The link is going to be up there, the link is going to be down there. You can get it, you can play it yourself, and I hope you have a little bit of fun with it. Getting into the pack itself, warband selection is fairly straightforward. If you're playing by yourself, you just pick your warband as normal. If you're playing cooperatively, you can actually play with another player against AI opponents. Maybe you're just learning how to get into the game and you want to handhold someone through a game against something that isn't necessarily a fully tricked out warband. That's something that you can also do. All you'll need to do is split the fighters of your warband between you and alternate activating them, and you can play that way. The warband that you will be fighting will be playing non-player fighters or NPFs. Don't blame me for this kind of nomenclature. That's what they used in Killteam, so I'm translating it over. These are basically just chuds, essentially. Guards, soldiers, you get some more powerful ones in there. Just normal guys that your warband might happen to come across when going through the Nullwood or whatever setting you like. You're not going to pick their warband as you would a normal warband. Instead, each of the specific missions will have a wound count, and you'll be building a warband up to that wound count with whichever fighters you want. I've got a list of fighters, we're going to go through that a little bit later. Because you're going to be playing against an AI opponent, some of the beginning of game stuff is a little bit different. When determining initiative, instead of both of you rolling dice, the AI opponent is always going to roll 3 dice. It will always roll 3 singles, and it will always win draws with the singles to enable it to go first. So that's one thing that you need to bear in mind when you are actually playing. The question is, how are your fighters actually going to act? So if we pop forward to the different behaviors, there are essentially 2 kinds of fighter. You've got fighter fighters, which are going to be your melee guys, and you've got watchmen who are going to be your ranged combat guys. They have a list of behaviors, and when you activate that fighter, you'll run down the list of behaviors, activate what you can activate until you've done your 2 actions as normal, plus your abilities. After that's finished, you're going to move onto your fighter, exactly like a normal game of Warcry. So if you have melee fighters, these fighters do have access to abilities. There are 3 abilities they'll be able to use. One is Charge, which is basically a bonus move. If you finish within 1 inch of an enemy fighter, they're going to take D3 damage. There is Deadly Strike. If you're already in combat, you get to do D6 damage points to the fighter you're in combat with. And the third one is Recuperate, which is basically a heal. It allows your ranged fighters to get out of trouble, heal back up, and then start attacking again. Now the question is, when are you going to be using these abilities? And that will be determined by the ability chart here. So if you are a melee attacker, you'll first try and do a Deadly Strike, then you will try and do a melee attack action. If you can't do either of those, you will charge towards the nearest visible enemy fighter, and if you can't do that, you will basically move. One of the questions that comes up is, how am I using the abilities of my fighters? The warband itself is going to be producing 3 singles, and you're going to be using these singles to do your abilities. So every time you want to use one of those abilities, it'll cost you a single, and you use abilities like you do as normal, with all the normal Warcry rules. If you can't do any of these behaviors, then the fighter's just going to wait, and it'll go on, the priority will pass back to you as normal. If you're a watchman, so if you're a ranged fighter, the first thing you're going to try and do is recuperate, which is try and heal. If you cannot heal, you're going to try and disengage. So if someone's locked you up, they will try and get away and then get into a better position to try and shoot enemy fighters. Third thing they're going to try and do is a range attack action, then a melee attack action. If it can't do any of that, it's going to move to a location where it can either see an enemy fighter, or it can look over objectives to try and defend those objectives from your fighters when you go to attack them. When enemy fighters are making move actions, there are a couple of rules that they're going to follow. Always take the quickest route. They'll try and jump, they'll try and climb. They will always jump down from platforms rather than climb down to try and get as close as possible, as quickly as possible. They'll never end above a pit if you're playing on the Catacombs rules, and they will never climb dangerous terrain. So they're not going to try and put themselves into danger, but generally speaking, they will try and get as close as possible to enemy fighters and attack them as much as they can. The MPFs themselves, they also follow a fairly loose and fast threat principle. The idea is, when you're activating one of the MPFs, you're going to be trying to make the move that's basically worst for you. So you're playing against an AI opponent, right? You could basically cheat and say, all right, well, this fighter's going to move over here. I'm going to make suboptimal moves and you can win that way, but it's not really in the spirit of the game. If you still can't decide on how you want to move, I've given you a priority list. You're going to activate first fighters that can either make melee or range attack actions, or failing that, fighters that are closer to the opponent's fighter. If you are a ranged fighter, you're going to be shooting at fighters who are contesting objectives or controlling objectives first, then the closest fighter, then wounded fighters, and finally, fighters that have not yet activated. If you're in melee and you can perform a melee attack action, you're going to be trying to attack fighters that are either controlling or contesting objectives, are wounded, or are not activated. So worst comes to worst, you can pick a fighter, run down this chart depending on what kind of fighter it is, and then it will do something for you that generally should be pretty good. All right, talking about the MPFs themselves, I said already they're split into two categories. We've got fighters and we have watchmen. There are 3 fighters of each type. So we've got mercenaries, bodyguard, and elite for the melee guys, sentries, marksmen, and elites for the watchmen. You will see that the mercenaries and the sentries are actually pretty bad, right? They're not going to do all that much. Ramping up to bodyguards and marksmen, they are much tougher. The bodyguard is kind of like your classic orc profile. They're going to stick around for a bit longer, 2-4 damage profile, so they actually become okay, especially when you take things like charge and deadly strike, doing a whole bunch of extra damage. Suddenly they become a bit of a threat to your fighters. Finally, we have the elite fighters. They're very strong. I intentionally made them very strong so that they would actually give a challenge to players. You look at the elite fighter, it's basically a stormcast, right? You do not want one of these to hit you. Word of caution, when you are building the warbands to play against, technically speaking, you could have a whole bunch of elites. I think you can run 6 of them in the average game. They are very hard, especially with the free move action and the extra damage and just rolling all those dice into you. They will kill you and they will do it very easily. The watchmen, on the other hand, they can sit there and shoot. Real difficult to shift because they'll always try and recuperate that damage. So if you try and snipe them down, they'll just heal it up. But you kind of have to really go and attack them with something big and beefy if you want to beat them in combat. Now, we've gone over the rules for the MPFs themselves. How are we going to use them? I've given you 3 battle plans. These battle plans are roughly translated from the 3 that you get in the Killteam AI, so they are similar kind of things. One way you have to kill things, one way you have to go get objectives, the other way you have to get off the board. First battle plan is Brutal Encounter, and it's real simple. If you kill all the enemy fighters, you win. If they kill all of you, they win. The amount of enemy fighters you're going to use have a combined wound characteristic of 120. For example, you could run something like 13 fighters, a lot of little guys, a couple of medium and 1 elite, or you could skew a little bit more to the heavy side of things where run like 3 elites and a whole bunch of little fighters, or any combination in between. But the idea is you pick whatever you want to play against and they set up evenly dispersed through the deployment. You'll basically fight each other. Second battle plan is Effigies to the Dark Gods. Warband is going to set up in very much the same way. Again, 120 wounds worth of fighters. The goal in this game is to try and destroy the opponent's objectives. There are 3 objective markers on the board. You have to run up to them, use an action, and then you will destroy that objective. If you manage to destroy all of the objectives, the game ends and you win. If you die before that, you lose. Now, you could play this, again, when you're playing this, you could tailor your list specifically to this mission, and you can say, okay, I'm going to play Nighthaunt. I'm going to bring 3 10-inch move flying horse dudes with me. I'm going to turn 1 move, activate it, and then I'm going to win the mission. That's kind of not in the spirit of playing these games. You're really doing it to teach someone, or you're doing it as a challenge to yourself. So bring a weaker warband. Don't try and tailor your warband specifically for these missions, and I think you'll have a better time. The NPFs in this mission do get reinforcements. If you've ever killed half the NPFs, you get to bring back 2 that have been taken down or 1 elite, and then you can set them up at the reinforcement markers, and then they will get to carry on. I've played this mission a whole bunch of times now. I've only won a couple of times. Usually I get an objective early, and then suddenly I'm swarmed by NPFs, and they do a ton of damage and I'm taken down. So it's pretty good. I kind of enjoy it. Last mission that we have is Escape the Camp. The NPF deployment is kind of weird here. You got these 2 triangles, and what you need to do is get your fighters off of the NPF board edge before you are taken down. As soon as all of your fighters are off the field, either taken down or off the board edge, the game ends. If you've got more than half your fighters and they've escaped, you win. Otherwise, you lose. Again, we've got the reinforcement thing in play, so NPFs get the opportunity to come back during this. You're only going to be playing 90 wounds worth of fighters in this one for the NPF team. If you want a harder challenge, you can crank those 120 wounds and the 90 wounds all the way up, put a lot more bodies on the table, and it'll be a lot harder for you. If you feel it's too hard, you can tone it back. You can play like 100 wounds and 80 wounds or 70 wounds, and things will be a little bit easier for you. I feel like through the playtesting that I've done, 120 wounds for the first 2 missions, and 90 wounds for the last mission, I think it gives the right level of challenge. If you're not tailoring your list to beat these missions specifically, you'll generally have a decent time. To put this all into practice, what I've done is I've done a little recording for you. I've set up a game, and I've gone through an example first turn. We go through all the rules, we go through all the different interactions, and I hope that makes things a little bit clearer for you. So here we go into Kitchen Cam with the Cooperative Play Mission Pack. Okay, so we are going to run through a turn with the PvE mission pack. We're going to be playing mission 2, Effigies to the Dark Gods. We have the 3 objectives here. We're going to be defended by our NPC force. I have a whole bunch of mercenaries, a couple of bodyguards here, and then we've got an elite fighter sitting here in the middle. The attackers in this case are going to be Hunters of Huanchi with their allies. I'm going to be using a whole bunch of Huanchi's claws. We've got Kixie Taka in there. We've got a Mizzen Master in there to add a little bit of speed. Our Lord with Bolas, and 1 basic skink with club. I've already set this up into Dagger, Hammer, and Shield. We have equally dispersed the NPC fighters. And yeah, let's begin. We will start on turn 1. What you do is you're going to be rolling ability dice as normal, and the NPC warband is going to be sitting on 3 dice. 3 dice always. I've rolled a double for singles. Because I have more singles as normal, I get to choose whether to go first or second. I'm going to take the first activation to try and outmaneuver the NPC warband. What I want to do is I want to try and get the NPCs away from the objectives. So I think what we're going to do here is move 1 of our claws. We're going to move it over to the side, try and take advantage of that behavior. What you want to try and do is you want to try and activate NPCs in the worst way for yourselves to try and stop you from actually doing things. So I think what we're going to do is, instead of activating the big guys, we're going to activate 1 of the small guys. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick that guy. We're going to look at the behavior chart, and we'll see what it's going to do. We're going to pick 1 of our spiders here. It can't deadly strike, it can't melee attack action. It could charge towards the closest visible enemy fighter, but I don't want it to charge because it's basically a waste of the free actions. So what we're going to do is going to move towards the closest visible enemy fighter, and we're going to do that twice. We're going to pick this spider here. He's going to move. We're going to go 8 inches because we're going to do a move action, end up in the middle of the board. Okay, so next up, it's back to me. The objective of this game is to get onto the objectives, and we're going to use an action to try and pop them. The game is going to end when all of the objectives are off the board. Now I've got this Mizzen Master sitting here, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to do something very simple. It's also very suicidal. He's going to jump into the middle of the board, and then we're going to use an action to remove the objective. Now, because that Mizzen Master is gone, and there's basically no other way for me to get any of the other objectives, the NPCs are going to kind of swarm around him and try and take him out so we can't use his speed for next turn. I think what we're going to do is activate 1 of our mercenaries. We're going to activate this mercenary here, I think, and looking down its behavior list, we're going to try and do Deadly Strike, which we can't do. Melee attack action we can't do. We are going to use the charge ability in that case. So that's a bonus move action. At the end of the fighter's move action, if there are any visible fighters within 1 inch of this fighter, the players get to pick one of those fighters, and we're going to do D3 damage. So we are going to do a free move action here with one of the fighters, and then we are going to roll some dice. We're going to do 2 wounds to our friend the Musings Master, and now this fighter is going to get 2 attack actions. Because it used an ability already, we're still following the main Warcry rules, so we're not going to get to use Deadly Strike. Our basic mercenary has a fairly weak profile, 3 attacks, strength 3, doing 1/3 damage. We get 3 hits and 1 crit, so that's a total of 6 damage to the Musings Master. Okay, back to the Hunters of Quan Chi turn. That Musings Master is probably going to die at some point. So I think what we need to do is get up there and support him, but we do have this fighter in the middle that's currently blocking and is currently in the way. So what we're going to do, this is in range of our Quan Chi's Claw. The Quan Chi's Claw is going to use a double to get +1 damage on its attacks, and we're just going to sit there and attack. Those 2 attacks do 7 points of damage to our mercenary, which is unfortunately not enough to kill them. Alright, there are a number of different things that we can do now. Because it's not entirely clear, I think what we're going to do is fall back onto the threat principle table. And the idea is, if multiple fighters have not yet activated, the players can activate the fighters that can either melee attack or range attack, or is closer to an enemy player's fighter. What that means is we are going to activate our elite here. Now, elites are intentionally extremely strong in this play mode. The idea being that you can't just run them over. They're basically better Stormcast, so they're going to move in. Okay, now, the elite, as it moves in, it has to do a charge first. The charge is a free move. It's going to do D3 damage. We're going to do 3 damage to our Musings Master, taking it up to 11. And then what we're going to do is we're going to attack as normal. It has 4 attacks at strength 5, doing 3/5, which is a very good damage profile. We're going to wound on 3s. We go crit, hit, bringing the Musings Master up to 22 and killing it outright. One thing worth mentioning in this game mode is that the fighters are intentionally extremely deadly, so you want to be trying to do the objectives as much as possible to minimize your casualties before you basically die. Okay, so I've fast forwarded a little bit. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be going back and forth in the same way that we've been going for this turn. We are now at the end of the turn. You can see what's happening here. We still have the middle objective that has been taken, but we have a number of fighters that have been tied up by the enemy NPC fighters. It's very likely that a lot of these fighters are actually going to die next turn. When you go into turn 2, you'll probably, from the player side, want to be looking to get priority, because if you don't, this guy is likely to die, one of these is likely to die, and then it will be extremely difficult for you to then go and get the objectives. So what we could be doing is disengaging move to get around. We could move fighters up onto this side of the battlefield to try and pull enemy fighters out of the way, and similarly we could do that on this side. Going into the later turns, we're effectively going to be doing that again and again, going back and forth until either your entire warband is dead or all of the objectives have been taken. Okay, and that is it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been something that is interesting to you. It was definitely a labor of love on my side, trying to translate the rules in a way that would, 1, work in Warcry, and 2, be engaging as an actual mission pack that someone would want to play. Of course, if you like what you see, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know down in the comment section below how you do with this mission pack. That'd be really cool to hear your thoughts on it. Maybe there are some improvements that I can make. Maybe, Sarah, there are some different battle plans that I can make for the second version. I think that'd be pretty nice to hear. So yeah, I'm happy to hear it. But yes, that is it from me for today. Thank you very much for watching. As always, I've been Itan. This has been Off Meta Musings, and we will see you next time.